I don't even know how it happened. Looking back, I can barely believe it myself, but I guess it's true. At least in my own head. I've been married to Mark for 6 years. We've got 2 kids now, Lucy, who's 4, and little Ben, who's 2. Our life, like everyone else's, is a mix of routines, work, and the occasional chaos of managing a family. We've been through a lot together, and I know we've both changed since we first got married. But I don't know, things started to feel off after Ben was born. The spark I thought we'd have forever was flickering. It wasn't that I stopped loving him. Not really. I still cared about him. Of course, I did. But somewhere in all of it, I just felt invisible. I started to notice how much easier it was to talk to other people, how I didn't feel like I had to pretend anymore. And there was him. I wouldn't call it an affair at first, not in my head anyway. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong when I started texting with Andrew again. Andrew and I went way back. We were close in high school, dated for a while, but then life happened. I ended up with Mark, and Andrew disappeared into his own life. A few years later, after I had been, I got a message from Andrew on Facebook. It felt so innocent at first. Just a quick hey, how have you been? And you know what? It felt nice. Just a friendly, no strings attached conversation. I didn't even tell Mark about it. It was just harmless catching up, right? That's what I told myself. But then we started texting more, and I don't know. There was something about it that made me feel noticed, I guess. Like I wasn't just mom or wife all the time. I could be someone else. He'd say things like, "You haven't changed a bit. You're still as beautiful as I remember." I laughed it off, but part of me liked hearing it. We didn't meet up at first. That's where I kept trying to convince myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just words on a screen, a few messages here and there. But over time, it felt like more. Like he remembered things about me that Mark had forgotten. Things about me before kids, before all the changes that life throws at you. Then, one night, it all came to a head. It was a Friday, I remember. Mark had been working late, and I was home with the kids. They'd finally gone to bed, and I was on the couch scrolling through my phone. Andrew had messaged me again. I don't know why, but I felt this strange pull to reply. One thing led to another, and we ended up talking on the phone. I had never thought about actually seeing him again. But that night it was like something clicked. He asked if I wanted to meet. At first, I said no. It didn't feel right, you know. I loved Mark. I really did. But there was this part of me that was so tired. Tired of being the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect everything. I just wanted to feel free, I guess. I told myself it would be fine, that it wasn't a big deal. We'd go to a bar, talk for a little while, and that would be it. I wouldn't let it go any further. But when I saw Andrew standing there outside the bar, I felt this rush of old feelings. He was smiling at me, like nothing had changed, like we were still the same people from high school. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to feel attracted to him. To feel like the person I used to be was still there somewhere. But it was all I could think about. We sat down and had a drink. The conversation flowed easily, like we hadn't spent years apart. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. I kept reminding myself that I was just here to talk. But then he touched my hand, and for a moment, I just let myself feel it. I let myself feel wanted, desired, like I wasn't just someone's wife or mother. I was still me. That night, I ended up staying longer than I meant to. I didn't tell Mark, of course. I came home late, pretending like I had just been out with some friends. I was still in a daze, almost numb. It was all so overwhelming. But then Andrew started calling me more. I let myself get sucked in. It wasn't just a physical thing. At least not at first. It was the way he made me feel. The way he talked to me. We'd spend hours talking on the phone, texting. And every time Mark would leave for work or be busy with the kids, I'd find myself making excuses to reach out to Andrew, and it just escalated. I kept telling myself that Mark wouldn't find out, that this wasn't cheating, that we were just friends, reconnecting. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. I knew I was hiding something. I knew I was crossing a line that I couldn't come back from, but it felt too good to stop. I was desperate to feel something other than exhaustion, other than the weight of being good enough, but I never thought it would go further than that. Not really. I had no idea how quickly things could spiral out of control. I'm not sure when it crossed the line. One minute I was telling myself it was just some harmless fun. The next minute I found myself in a situation I couldn't control anymore. Looking back, I wish I could pinpoint that exact moment where everything went from texting to something real. But I guess when you're living in denial, you never really see it coming. It was a Tuesday. Mark had gone to work, and I was sitting in the living room, trying to keep the kids entertained. Lucy was on the floor, building some weird castle out of Legos, and Ben was fussing because I wouldn't let him eat the crayons. Everything was normal. Mark had kissed me goodbye like he always did, told me he'd be home around 6, and I just waved him off as I usually did, thinking about nothing more than the laundry piling up in the corner. But then I got a message from Andrew. It wasn't like the usual ones we'd exchanged. It was different. He said something like, "I miss you, you know that." I felt this weird flutter in my chest, the kind I hadn't felt in ages. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed the excitement of someone wanting me, the feeling of being desired in that way. Mark, on the other hand, well, it felt like we were just roommates most days. I told myself that texting back wouldn't hurt, but my hands were shaking when I typed out my response. Something inside me was screaming that this was wrong, that I shouldn't be doing this, but at the same time, I couldn't stop myself. We started talking, and it was like everything else around me faded. I remember when he asked me to come meet him that night. I hesitated. Of course I did. My brain was screaming at me to stay away, that I had a family, a husband who needed me. But something about that pull was so strong. It wasn't just about sex or attraction. It was about who I was when I was with him. I wanted to be that version of myself again. I wanted to feel like someone could look at me and not see a tired mother, a nagging wife, a woman who barely had the energy to make dinner, let alone go out on a date. I missed the feeling of excitement, of living outside of the bubble I'd put myself in. So, I told Mark I was going out to meet a friend from work. It wasn't even a lie. Technically, I was going to meet someone, just not the person I said I would. I couldn't even remember the last time I did something spontaneous, did something for me. That night, I was going to remind myself what it felt like to be more than just mom or wife. And Andrew made me feel that way. When I arrived at the bar, the tension was almost unbearable. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I pushed open the door, and there he was. He looked the same but different. Older, obviously, but still that spark in his eyes, the same way he made me laugh without even trying. It felt almost like we'd never left each other's lives. We ordered a couple of drinks, just like last time. Small talk at first, nothing too heavy. But then he leaned in, and I could feel the heat from his body. I tried to tell myself it was just a moment, that I wasn't going to let this get out of hand. But then he kissed me, and it was like all my resolve, all my excuses just disappeared. I had no idea how it happened. One moment, I was sitting at the bar, trying to act casual, and the next thing I knew, I was in his arms, kissing him like I hadn't kissed anyone in years. I didn't even feel guilty in that moment. I just felt alive, like something inside me had been awoken. It wasn't about Andrew, really, not at that point. It was about me, about finding a part of myself I had forgotten, a part of me that had been buried under the weight of responsibilities and routines. Afterward, we went to his place. I could hear my phone buzzing in my bag. Mark, I'm sure. But I didn't care. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not because I didn't love Mark, but because I didn't know how to face what I was doing. I didn't know how to deal with the truth. At Andrew's place, I was just a woman. No titles, no expectations. I wasn't someone's wife. I wasn't someone's mother. I was just me. And that feeling, that rush of freedom, made me want more. The whole night was a blur. I kept thinking about how easy it was to slip into this new version of myself, how good it felt to feel wanted again. I'm not proud of what happened. I can barely even look at myself when I think about it. But in that moment, I couldn't stop. When I finally got home, it was nearly 3 a.m. Mark was asleep on the couch, probably waiting up for me. I felt like I was in some kind of dream. I couldn't even look at him properly. I just quietly snuck upstairs, got into bed, and closed my eyes. I couldn't sleep, though. I kept thinking about everything, about Andrew, about the kids, about how I was lying to the one person who trusted me the most. But I couldn't undo what had happened. It was done. The next day, I acted like nothing was wrong. I tried to get back into the usual routine, get Lucy ready for preschool and Ben settled for his nap. I told myself it would be fine, that I wouldn't let it happen again. But I knew that wasn't true. I knew I wanted more, and I couldn't stop. The aftermath hit me faster than I thought it would. It wasn't just about the physical part of it, not really. Sure, there was the shame that came with what I had done, but the worst part was the guilt that consumed me every minute of the day. I couldn't look at Mark without feeling like a stranger in my own house. Every smile he gave me, every casual kiss on the cheek, felt like a reminder of how I had betrayed him. And every time I kissed him, I couldn't shake the memory of Andrew's lips on mine. But here's the thing I couldn't stop. That was the worst part. I would tell myself every night that I was done, that I wasn't going to go back to Andrew, that I wasn't going to lie to Mark anymore. But then Andrew would text me, and I would immediately forget all the promises I had made to myself. He knew just what to say. It wasn't even just about the sex anymore. It was about how he made me feel seen. Mark didn't get it. He was always tired, always distracted, always thinking about work or the kids. And when I was with Andrew, it felt like I was alive. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that I was just craving something I hadn't realized was missing. But the truth was, I knew what I was doing. I was chasing that rush, that feeling of being wanted and desired. And the worst part, I wasn't even thinking about how it affected Mark. I wasn't thinking about him at all, really. Then came the day I couldn't lie anymore. It was a Saturday morning. Mark was playing with the kids in the living room while I was upstairs, trying to catch up on some laundry. I had just finished putting the clothes in the dryer when my phone buzzed. It was Andrew. I don't even know why I opened it. Maybe I was hoping it would be something innocent, just a message about work or something. But no, it was a picture. I froze. It was a picture of him, sitting in a coffee shop, smiling into the camera, a message underneath. Wish you were here. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I realized how deeply I had gotten myself into this mess. It wasn't just a few stolen moments or casual texting anymore. I had crossed a line, and I couldn't pretend like it wasn't happening. I was living in two worlds, and I couldn't keep up the facade any longer. I knew Mark would never forgive me if he found out, but I also knew that I couldn't keep living this double life. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the pressure building up inside me, the need to confess, the guilt weighing me down. Maybe I just wanted to stop pretending. I went downstairs, took a deep breath, and sat next to Mark on the couch. The kids were playing quietly, oblivious to what was going on. "Mark," I said, my voice shaking. He looked up at me, confused, probably expecting me to ask about something routine, like dinner or plans for the afternoon. Instead, I just blurted it out. "I need to tell you something." For a second, I could see the concern in his eyes. "What is it, babe?" I didn't know where to begin. How could I explain what I had done? How could I explain to him that I had betrayed him? That I had let someone else touch me in ways he should have been the only one to do? I could already see the disappointment in his face, and I hadn't even told him yet. I started, but the words wouldn't come. My throat felt tight. I wasn't ready for this, but I knew I had to say it. "I've been seeing someone else." I couldn't even look at him. I stared at my hands, twisted together in my lap. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, to admit the truth to his face. Mark didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, like he couldn't process it. He looked over at the kids, who were still playing, completely unaware, and that's when I saw it, the hurt in his eyes, the confusion, the shock. And then he said it. "Who is it?" I couldn't even answer him right away. I thought I'd say Andrew's name, and it would feel like I was ripping off a bandage. But saying it out loud made it real. I felt sick. I didn't want to hurt him like this, but I had already done it. "It's Andrew. From high school." I finally muttered, barely able to breathe. Mark went silent again, and I could feel the air between us thickening with the tension. For a moment, I thought maybe he hadn't heard me right, that I could take it all back, that he wouldn't believe it. But he did. And the disappointment in his eyes was enough to tear me apart. He didn't yell at me. He didn't scream. He just looked at me. And it was worse than anything he could have said. "How long has this been going on?" "Almost a month," I whispered. I couldn't look at him when I said it. I couldn't bear to see the way he would react. I was so sure that in that moment, everything was over. I had already destroyed the one thing I had always counted on. Our family, our marriage. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I tried to explain, to justify what I had done, but I couldn't make sense of it myself. What was I even supposed to say? That I needed to feel desired. That I missed the attention. That it wasn't even about Andrew anymore. That it was about me feeling lost. Mark didn't say anything else for a long time. He just sat there processing it. And then he finally stood up and walked out of the room, leaving me sitting there with nothing but my guilt. It wasn't until later that night, after the kids were in bed, that he came back. I could see it in his eyes that he had been crying. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to make it right. He didn't ask me to leave. He didn't threaten divorce or anything like that. But I could tell from the way he looked at me that everything had changed. There was no going back from this. And that's when I realized what I had done had broken something between us. It wasn't just a matter of forgiveness anymore. It was about trust, and once that was gone, I didn't know how to rebuild it. The next few days were the hardest I've ever experienced. I couldn't look at Mark without feeling like I was suffocating. Every time I caught his eye, I saw the hurt there, the quiet anger, the confusion. He was trying so hard to keep it together for the kids, and I couldn't tell if that was making it worse or not. Sometimes, the silence between us was worse than any shouting could have been. The weight of everything I'd done hung over us like a thick fog, and there was no escaping it. I kept waiting for Mark to explode, for him to tell me to leave, or to throw something, or to say that he couldn't forgive me, but he didn't. Instead, he just got quieter, more withdrawn. He started spending more time in the office, saying he had work to catch up on. He'd come home, kiss the kids, and then retreat to the spare room to work or watch TV. And I couldn't blame him for it. What else could he do? He couldn't just erase what I'd done. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to make things right, but I didn't know where to start. Every time I tried to talk to him, to explain myself, it felt like I was making things worse. Mark didn't want to hear my excuses, and I didn't want to give them. I didn't want to explain why I had let myself do something so stupid, so selfish. How could I even justify the hurt I had caused him? There was no excuse. None at all. That first week after my confession, I didn't hear from Andrew. He didn't text me, didn't try to call, nothing. And at first, I was relieved. I thought maybe he was giving me space, respecting what had happened. But as the days dragged on, I realized something else. I missed him. I missed the way he made me feel, the way he had made me feel seen and important. And I hated myself for it. It didn't help that every time I was with Mark, I couldn't stop thinking about how distant he had become me. He didn't yell at me. He didn't call me names or accuse me of anything. He just shut down, and I couldn't blame him for it. He had every right to feel betrayed, and I had every right to feel like I didn't deserve his forgiveness. But part of me still wanted it. I still wanted him to forgive me, to tell me that everything would be okay. I wanted him to say that we could move past this, that I was still the woman he had married, that our family could still be whole. But he didn't say that. He couldn't. A few days later, I finally reached out to Andrew. I told myself that I wouldn't do something so reckless. But I did. I sent him a message, telling him that I needed to talk. I didn't want anything physical. I didn't even want to meet him. I just needed to talk. And when he replied almost immediately, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. But I couldn't stop myself. We met up the next day at a coffee shop. It felt strange. The moment I saw him, the old feelings resurfaced. It was like I had been holding my breath for weeks, and now I could finally exhale. But as we sat there, talking, something in me started to shift. I realized how much I had been fooling myself. I was not the same person I had been when I was with Andrew years ago. I had changed. I had built a family, a life with Mark. I had children now, and no matter how much I longed for the attention, for the excitement, I couldn't keep doing this to the people who depended on me. I didn't want to tell Andrew this. I didn't want to admit that I had been selfish. But I had to. I had to be honest with myself. I told him that I couldn't see him anymore, that I had made a huge mistake. I told him that I needed to focus on my marriage, that I had to fix what I had broken. And, surprisingly, he understood. I'm sure he was hurt too, but he agreed, and we parted ways. That afternoon, I went home and found Mark in the kitchen, making dinner. I didn't know what I was going to say, but when he looked at me, I saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't anger, and it wasn't just hurt anymore. It was sadness. He wasn't mad at me. He was disappointed. He was grieving the woman he thought I was, and it broke me. It broke me to my core. I sat down at the table, my heart racing, my throat tight. "Mark," I said, and my voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to make this right, but I will spend the rest of my life trying. I know I've hurt you, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose this family." He didn't say anything right away. He just kept stirring the soup. The silence stretched on, and I thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. Maybe he was done with me. But then he looked up, and his face softened just a little. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said quietly. "I don't know if I can trust you again. You've broken something between us, and I don't know if it can ever be fixed." His voice was steady, but there was a tremor in it. "But I'm willing to try. For the kids, at least. For us. But this is going to take time. And if you really want to make things right, you need to show me you're serious. No more lies. No more excuses." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing: I had to fight for this. I had to fight for my family. And I wasn't sure if we'd ever be the same. But I knew I couldn't keep running from the consequences of what I had done. The next few weeks were filled with awkward silences, long conversations, and attempts to rebuild what I had broken. Mark was willing to try, but it wasn't easy. I had lost his trust, and that wasn't something I could get back overnight. But slowly we started working through it, and though it wasn't perfect, I knew I couldn't let go of the man I had built a life with. As for Andrew, he faded from my life. That chapter was over. But I would never forget the lessons I learned. The most painful lesson of all being that what you think you want isn't always what you need. And in the end, the one thing I needed the most was to be honest with myself and the people who mattered the most.